for Bath in terms of the local plan, but also the lead on Hicksgate as well.
Brilliant. And
Thanks,
then,
Dave.
and then Sarah and Alison.
Hello there, I'm Sarah Dixon. I'm the locality manager for Bath and North East Somerset Council. And I'm Alison Wells, Community Engagement Officer with the Council.
Okay. Brilliant. Now, the format for this evening is very, very informal. And Stephen's got a small presentation. There is going to be some conversations, some slides about where we are so far with the local plan, some of the things about the time frame, some of the stuff about going forward, because obviously there's been some changes. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat if you can, and then we'll either take them as we're going along if it's pertinent to something that Stephen is actually talking about, or otherwise we'll do the questions at the end of the session. And having done a few of these already, it'll probably all be finished by 6:30 unless there's lots and lots of questions. But if there is, then we'll deal with them. We're not going to cut off at that arbitrary time period if we've still got things that people want to say. So if everybody's happy, and I'll just reiterate now because I've got some more people that's come in, it is being recorded. If you can all put your microphones on mute. If you don't wish it to be recorded and go on the council's Facebook page, then please turn your camera off. And as I said, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, Stephen, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Well, hello everybody, and thank you for coming. So as I said earlier on, my name is Steve George. I'm a principal planner in the planning policy team, and I'm here just to give you a brief overview about the reset of the local plan, and I'll also cover what the local plan is, some of the proposed changes to the national planning policy framework, the programme as well, and process for resetting the local plan. And then yeah, we can have some questions afterwards. So what is the local plan? It's for those of you that don't know, it's a key document that's used in the determination of planning applications, and it will set out a planning framework for the next 20 years or so. So it sort of sets out a vision and a direction for future change. So it looks at priorities and a strategy. It allocates particular sites for development. So typically larger sites, it will have a site allocation policy which will provide sort of design requirements or development expectations on that particular site. It will also contain development management policies as well, and it also has land designations, and I'll come on to that on the next slide. So the local plan also reflects the council's corporate priorities, and needs to be supported by robust evidence and strategies, and importantly, it's informed by the consultations that we do and by stakeholder engagement. Just in terms of the land designations, this is just a sample of some that cover Bath. The principal ones: the World Heritage Site, the setting of the World Heritage Site. You've got the national landscape as well, which covers about 2/3 of the city, and you've got Greenbelt as well. So it's so there's lots of kind of designations that are part of the planning process as well. So just in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework, or the NPPF for short. So this sets out the government's planning policies and how these are expected to be applied. So local authorities need to be in general conformity with the NPPF. So when the new government came in, they published proposed changes to the NPPF and some other changes to the planning system. The consultation has generated quite a large number of responses, and we're anticipating the final NPPF, if not this month, because I think there has been rumours that it could be published before Christmas. It'll be next month in January. And some of the key changes for the planning system I'll come on to later, but they're really about facilitating sustainable economic growth and the delivery of 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. So it's quite a challenging agenda that we've got. And I think it's reasonable to say that there's a broad alignment with the council's corporate priorities for more affordable housing and a greener and more prosperous economy. So just looking at a bit more detail about what's being proposed in the NPPF. Firstly, I should just say as well that we're required to plan to meet the housing need. And the housing figures within Bath and North East Somerset have changed quite dramatically, you could say. We've had a 104% increase in the amount of homes that we need to plan for. So from around 14,000 that we were planning for previously to about 29,000 over the plan period. So that's up to, so our plan period is from 2022 to 2042. So it's covers that 20-year period. There's a 5-year housing land supply that's requirement that's been reinstated, and so that means we've got to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. And if we're not able to do that, then the rules change slightly. So there's a presumption in favour of unsustainable development, and we have less control over where development goes. So that's one of the issues that we're keen to resolve. And there's a strengthened expectation for approving brownfield sites, housing applications. And the NPPF is promoting an uplift in densities as well, particularly in urban areas. There's greater importance placed on sub-regional planning. So that involves working with WECA more closely and WECA's involvement within this process. And there's already a duty to cooperate with neighbouring authorities, and that's been strengthened. And I understand there'll be some further changes that will come through from the government on that point as well. There's changes to Greenbelt, and so we'll be required to review the Greenbelt and release land to meet our housing need in full, unless it undermines the overall function. So Greenbelt is not a reason not to meet the housing needs that we have. And the NPPF also introduced the concept of grey belt, which is brownfield land within the green belt, and which makes a limited contribution to green belt purposes. And it's also introduced some golden rules. So there's a sequential approach to brownfield first, then grey belt in sustainable locations, and then after that greenfield sites. And there's also a requirement for 50% of affordable housing to come forward on those green belt sites that have been released, and to improve nature. So we're yet to really discover how deliverable these new requirements are, but I think we'll soon be finding out. Some other points here, a key driver as well that I've already mentioned is about a plan for growth in key economic sectors. So we're working with the West of England Combined Authority, WECA, on local growth plans, and there's a greater emphasis on social rented housing, which to meet the lowest incomes, and there's less emphasis on affordable home ownership. There was a so that was the case until fairly recently, and there's greater support for onshore wind and for other forms of renewable energy. So in terms of the implications for the local plan and the council's response, and the overall ambition for places and for delivering more affordable housing is welcomed. In terms of the revised housing figure, we're pushing for a bit more flexibility, in particular to take into account some of the designations that we have to deal with. For example, the setting of the World Heritage Site is a major constraint on further development or expansion of the city. We'd like, but having said that, we'd like to facilitate these discussions so we can consider these sustainable options for growth of Bath. We recognise the importance of delivering 50% affordable housing, and we'll be seeking to do that everywhere. So not just on the sites released from Greenbelt land. A key point that we made here as well, that infrastructure must support growth. We can't just have the housing without the infrastructure that's required to get with that. So it's about reviewing the funding mechanisms and to achieve that. And of course, local planning authorities need to be properly funded to enable this delivery. As you can see, it's a significant growth that we've got to address. Yeah, okay, so why are we resetting the local plan? As many of you might know, we undertook a consultation earlier on this year, and that was based on the previous figure that we had of about 14,000 homes. So because it's doubled, and because of the implications of the changes to the NPPF, we do need to reset the local plan and reconsider how we can meet these changes. And the spatial priorities and many of the proposals from the previous consultation that we undertook will remain valid, as will many of the comments that we received. So I just wanted to reassure you that the comments that have already been made will be taken into account in formulating the new options plan. But please partake in the next consultation that we do. There's further evidence that we need to commission as well in terms of the local housing needs assessment, which really explores what type of housing we need and where, what kind of tenures that needs to be. We need to do additional work on the Greenbelt as well, not least because of the amount of new housing that we need to address. So we need to consider the impacts on the Greenbelt. We also need to look at the economic growth impacts of more housing here. So if there's a growth in terms of the housing numbers, there's a growth in terms of the employment numbers as well, probably. We also look and we also need to look at the transport the transport modelling to accommodate an increased population in terms of travelling sustainably. So we need to re-look at all the options for development. So many of the options that we consulted on previously will stay, but we need to look at the additional opportunities as well that we have in within the whole district. And there'll be further engagement with communities and other stakeholders in the summer of next year. So just a bit of a recap of what we did before. So the current spatial strategy has sought to focus the growth in the most sustainable locations. So you can see on this plan here, this is about it's a map that relates to the transport connectivity, but also the level of facilities that there are in different parts of the district. So obviously Bath is a really sustainable place, which is why it's coloured in green here, and then it peters out to the red sort of on the edges. But there are other places as well. For example, the Bristol to Bath strategic corridor, which is subject to a significant public transport investment at the moment. So we'd be looking along that corridor as well, particularly in Keynsham and Salford, and on the edges of Bristol as well, particularly Hicksgate and Whitchurch. And to the south of the district, we're looking at the Summer Valley and some of the opportunities to improve or to provide more housing there and to improve the quality of public transport down there and of infrastructure as well. So these are some of the locations that we tested previously. And yeah, so just a brief word on the World Heritage Site. So the UK planning system is a really important way of protecting the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site, and the local plan plays a critical role in enabling that. And indeed, the management plan for the World Heritage Site does rely on the local plan to deliver its objectives. And if you want to read the World Heritage Site Management Plan, it's now currently out for public consultation, so please do. And just a few points about what the local plan does. So it has strategic policies that seek to sustain and enhance the significance of the city's heritage. It contains a set of design values that capture the essence of Bath and provide the context for a specific Bath design policy. So it's about managing change. It's trying to ensure that the change that happens within the city is responsive to its context. And we're also looking at doing more a more detailed design work on an introduction of design codes, which will further kind of help to the toolkit that we have in terms of planning policies that help to manage change. And a key aspect of what we do in the local plan is sites allocations that really set out the design requirements, the development requirements and design parameters for development sites within the city. Yeah, just a brief word on this piece of work that we've just undertaken. So this will form part of the evidence base that will inform the local plan. but it's looking at Bath's production quarter, which is really made up of Locksbrook Road and Brassmill Lane, but also Western Ireland. Recognising the important role of this area to the economy of the city, and seeking to protect it for that use, but also looking at the opportunities to intensify some of the uses on the sites. So this is just an example of some of the evidence base that we've been undertaking that will inform this work. And some of the other things we're looking at is about enhancing the riverside environment and the ecological networks and sustainable transport as well. So just a few words about the programme and the process. So here's an overview of the programme. So as I mentioned, the next consultation that we've got will be in the summer of next year. So that will be an open consultation and a fairly wide-ranging consultation, but it will be building on the consultation that we did earlier on this year, taking on board the comments that were received. And then in March or April of 2026, we will have the draft plan consultation. So the draft plan is the plan that the council wants to adopt. Okay, so it's a bit more formal in terms of the council's, in terms of its consultation stage, and comments that are made to the draft plan are considered by the planning inspector. So that's the next stage that we're anticipating to be in the latter half of 2026. So we have an examination stage, which is presided over by an independent inspector, and then hopefully by the end of the year we'd have received the inspector's report, and he'll be saying whether the local plan is sound or not, and whether we've done a good job of producing it and followed all the guidance that we need to follow. And so we're looking at the adoption of the new local plan, say in March 2027. Yeah, just in terms of community engagement, we're working on a comms and engagement plan at the moment, and it's a key role for communities in that, and we are working for you, and so we're looking at the lessons learned from previous options at consultation. I will be undertaking a broad but also a targeted engagement, and we're looking at the engagements of demographics as well to make sure they're represented. So I will be intervening where we can to make sure that perhaps those seldom heard groups get to be heard within this process. And we'll be coordinating with the other council consultations that will be underway as well. And this is just a word cloud of some of the consultations that we undertook previously. So this is some of the issues that are clearly of importance to the community that were involved. And that's it. So any questions? Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, no, thank you, Steve. There's nothing in the chat at the moment. So if anybody does have any questions, then please just unmute yourself and ask, and hopefully Stephen will be able to answer them. If we can't answer them, then we will take the question down and make sure that we provide you with an answer at a later date, so that you may not know the answers to all of the questions that come up. Has anybody got any questions they particularly want to ask, Steve?
Yeah.
All right, if you could just identify it. Yeah.
Jan had her hand up.
Hi, Dave. There's a few people. Sorry.
Let me get.
Who
Let
goes
me get.
first?
Let me get out the chat a minute. Let's have a look.
Do you want to go first, Jan?
Yeah, it's a fairly simple one, really. The letter that was sent to the Deputy Prime Minister, that was very interesting. What response did you get to that?
I don't know if we've had a response yet.
Thought that would be the case somehow. She might have had quite a lot of correspondence. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got Paul Jackson with the hand up, and then Alex is number 2, please. Paul.
Right, thank you. My question's really about the quota for the housing, because it strikes me that in Baines in general, particularly in Bath, a lot of housing has been taken out of the housing stock as second homes and also as holiday lets. So my question is, are there plans to try and license holiday lets and regulate them and possibly restrict them and release those houses for homes that could perhaps go towards the quota?
Yeah. I know this has been, it's been an issue that's been discussed before and it's been looked at before in terms of the evidence, the information about that we require to do that. And it comes down to the planning system's ability to control that. And I think there are some measures that we can do, but it's perhaps more limited than you'd hope for. I'm not sure about the licensing though, and whether there are different mechanisms through those channels. I mean, maybe if someone else in the room knows more about that, and then please pipe up. But sorry, that's a bit of a vague answer, but I know it's been looked at in the past, and it is something that we recognise that it can be a problem in certain locations, but it's also, I suppose, part of the tourist economy as well for the city, which can be quite important in terms of that. In terms of holiday lets, for example.
Okay, I've got Alex, and then I've got Angie who's a hand up. Alex.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Thanks, Steve. That's really great. And Jan, you beat me to it, actually, the question about the letter to the Deputy Prime Minister. So I think we would all want to get that outcome, all of us here and the council as well. I guess the question was about, there was a lot of work done for the previous local plan, which was great, Steve. I was really interested in the evidence base about the 77% of need being for affordable housing, and whether you've done any research into the increase in overall numbers of housing needed and what that does, because obviously the grey belt focuses on if any of that land is achievable and realistic. The grey belt focuses on providing 50% affordable housing, subject to viability, of course. And I guess the question is does that massive increase in housing, which is a huge problem, does that shift the balance of the affordable need? And is it even achievable? Is 50, if we could do 50%, does it even scratch the surface of that level of need of affordable housing?
Yeah, I think it would just help. It would. I'm sure it would scratch the surface, but I think the challenge is, can we achieve the 50% on those greenbelt sites? I mean, we'd love to, but it's I think the caveat of it being subject to viability is not helpful, because that's always going to happen. But yeah, in terms of the 77%, we will be updating the NA to see what we can do about that, and what policies we can have to help meet that need.
Yeah, if I can just thanks, Steve. That's great. And just to follow up on the point that Paul made, I think Baines and Curo have both done some research that shows that there's a sort of it's looking like there is a trend that a higher proportion of new homes that have been built are going to people who want to just buy second homes in Bath. And so that's that trend, or certainly hire people who can afford them. Certainly that trend seems to be happening at some of the estates, like Ensley Estate has got disproportionate number of people who don't have kids, and that school's just had to close. So I guess, I guess that is a really pertinent question about, it must be immensely frustrating for the local planning authority to be consenting housing and then knowing that that's going to just luxury homes for very wealthy people when the housing need is so acute in Bath. And it'd be really interesting to explore whether there are any opportunities to address that in a real way, because it's just making the situation so much worse.
Absolutely. I mean, it's yeah, we can't control that. We can't control, and who buys the sort of open market housing. But if you got information on this, Alex, it'd be really good to share that. And actually, if we can have discussions and and I think as part of this process, if we can try and find solutions, I think that would be really helpful.
I mean, let's take it offline, Steve, because there are models around the country where sort of public-private partnerships have done that, because the private landowners have got possibly more control over tenure. But yeah, let's it'd be good to talk that through further.
Okay, great, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got Angie Paddock next, and then Stephen Little.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Just a question here. There's been a lot of student accommodation built in around Bath. How does that gel with the council's take on finding more homes, building more homes, when a lot of people are seeing a lot of new builds on, for instance, Lower Bristol Road? How is the council going to balance accommodating students with accommodating the need for homes?
Absolutely. The policy we had in the options document is really focusing new student accommodation on campus. So it had a number of options, and that was the key one that has been promoted, that student accommodation will be on campus. And obviously, there's other providers out there that are saying that their site should be allocated for student accommodation. But the council has made its priorities quite clear, that it wants to meet the housing need and the employment need in full before it meets some of the other needs. I should just say, historically, when we produced the previous plans, so we allocated enough sites within the city to meet our then need. So we had a certain need for housing, a certain need for employment, and we allocated those sites to demonstrate that we were meeting that need. I think what we found over the past 10 years or so is that a lot of the student housing that's come forward has been on sites that haven't been allocated for other purposes. And I suppose I'm thinking of sites like the cricket club, or the site behind the magistrates' court. So there are certain limitations, I suppose, of the planning system in being able to control everything. But we have been tightening up in terms of where PBS say I can go. But it is a live issue that will, I'm sure, continue.
Sorry, and can you, I'm assuming the council will be looking at places within the city that are empty houses or buildings that can be converted into
Absolutely.
homes rather than accommodation for students.
Yes, absolutely. So we will be trying to prioritise those.
Okay, I'm just wondering also be interested to see how the council, if changing the rules for the green belt, because a lot of people, especially where I live in Weston, are very protective of. We've got the Western Rec behind us. We've got the fields. We're quite lucky. How the council's approaching taking away some of the green belt land to build new houses, and the assurance that this will be houses for low income families and not, as the gentleman said, being sold on to other families for second homes or.
Yeah. Well, so, and so this is the process that the local plan will need to go through. So we'll be we will be looking at the whole district, and we'll be looking at the most appropriate areas to release from the green belt for development. But obviously, the change is and also the changes to try and achieve 50% affordable housing on these sites. So that's what we'll be seeking to do, but it is a balancing act, and some of the locations around Bath are particularly sensitive. It's so it's not really a green belt. It's not really a green belt point of view. It's really about the setting of the World Heritage Site or a national landscape, and so you have these multiple designations that will actually make it more difficult to remove land from those areas. Okay.
Thank you, Angie. Right, I've got Stephen Little. Stephen.
Right, like the previous speaker, I'm very alarmed at the erosion of the green belt. Can B&NES not make more of a forceful case for Bath being a special case? And there were hints of that at in the presentation, but yeah, it should be put forward as a special case for two reasons: the World Heritage Site and the topographical limitations of expanding Bath.
Yeah, we absolutely are making that. We have made that a key point back to government in terms of the housing requirement that we've got to meet. And the limitations that we have because of the assets that we have and the sensitivities that we have. So it is fully recognised, that point.
Well, good. I hope you'll be really forceful in emphasising that point.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
David, there's someone with their hand up.
Yeah. Steve Richards, you've got your hand up. I'm sorry, I'm on two screens, so I'm flicking backwards and forwards. Steve.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Fine. Okay. Just to say that I've lived in Lower Weston for 51 years, and so I'm very familiar with the local community, and picking up concerns from other people about the amount of new accommodation that's being created, particularly along the Lower Bristol Road, but also wondering specifically what development is planned for the Hartwell site on the Upper Bristol Road, which has been empty for at least 2 years now, I think. And my concerns are around the impact of all these developments on the infrastructure, on the roads, the public services, sewage, use of buses and so on. It just strikes me that Bath will grind to a halt in some respect, given the volume of new build, although, as we heard, quite a bit of it may actually remain unoccupied, which is scandalous in a way. So, a bit of a generalised question, but I appreciate your response.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's a frequently heard comment, and I think we'd all agree with it that the infrastructure needs to keep up and needs to keep pace with development, and it's a point that we've made back to the government, and it's a point that's frequently made when we're in public consultation, and so we will be seeking to kind of optimise what we can get out of development and trying to improve things. I should also say that there's been parallel conversations or consultations about transport and about it's called creating sustainable communities. And so there's been recent consultation, and I think there's more consultation coming about addressing some of the transport challenges of the city. I mentioned as well about the Bristol to Bath strategic corridor, which is a sort of metro style bus corridor that WECA are leading on, which will be delivered in or by March 27. So that's a major project that's improving public transport between the two cities.
Thank you. Can you say anything about the Hartwell's site?
The Hartwell site. So I understand it's got planning permission, and I thought it was progressing in terms of some of the legal agreements so I understood that it was progressing, but I'm not sure when that will actually happen. But I understand progress is being made on that.
Do you know what the intended development is?
It's a mixture of residential accommodation and student accommodation.
Mm. Yes, I think we were aware of that. Again, local people are concerned about the scale of it, which seems excessive on the basis of the information we had quite some time ago.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Anybody else? Any other questions? I did have one. The presentation at the start, Stephen, there was a slide of Bath and North East Somerset where you had a map of the strategic sites.
Yeah.
Is that a map of the strategic sites based on the 14,000 housing number or the 28,000?
That was on the 14,000.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So that's what we previously consulted on. And we're going to have to go through the same process, but perhaps with a few more areas.
Well, it was a comment made by somebody else locally who couldn't make it tonight. So even if you allocated those on the map, we've still only allocated half of what we need to, basically.
Well, that map contained that map was showing probably more than 14,000 because it was showing a range of options.
Right. Okay.
But I'm pretty sure it wasn't showing 28,000 or 29,000. Sorry.
Right. Okay. Anybody else got any other questions? Oh, yeah, I've got one. Somebody's come up. Paul Jackson.
Yeah, I'm coming back again. Just picking up on your point. I can't get my camera to work. Never mind. I'm just picking up on your point that you made about the new builds. Do I take it that the emphasis now will be more on build to rent because of the requirement for social housing and affordable housing rather than build to buy?
No, not what in terms of affordable housing or in terms of market housing.
Well, it could be both, couldn't it? I mean, I'd have thought if it was build to rent, you could control the usage more. Naively, I don't know what the planning powers are, but I just thought that might be a way around it.
Yeah, these two, so build to rent and co-living are relatively new sort of models into the market. And so we need to update our planning policy framework to probably better manage that. We're looking at introducing some guidance notes actually on co-living in terms of the qualities that we'd expect those proposals to have. In terms of addressing affordable housing, I mean, that's a specific need or a specific kind of model. So and we'd get that on the back of kind of market driven housing. So we probably wouldn't require more build to rent because the market's already providing quite a lot of that. and is filling a gap. There is I think there probably is a gap in terms of what's provided in the market at the moment. But I think there's a risk of an oversupply perhaps. So I think we need to look carefully at that through our local housing needs assessment, and in terms of managing the type of homes that come forward, to make sure that it meets the needs that we've got.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Oh, sorry, I just thought I saw a hand go up again. I did.
Steve Richards has got his hand up again.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yes. Just really to follow that up, I suppose it seems to me that we are never going to get from market providers, commercial developers, the kind of housing which is needed for families on low or modest incomes, or individuals and joint households for that matter. Probably, again, it's only local authorities returning to the old models of council housing who can do that. What can you say about the prospect for our council actually building on any scale and making places available at affordable, genuinely sensible, affordable rents?
Yeah, well, the council is doing this more and more. So the council is very active in this, in that fields, but it is still within it. It's still kind of early days, really. So it's quite difficult to say that it will happen on significant scale. I mean, we'd like to, but there are obviously limitations in terms of land availability and funding, etc. But a key role of the planning system is to influence what the private housing market will deliver, and so a clear example of that is that's how we get the affordable housing that we get through the planning policies. And there's always a negotiation. So we might have policies in place to say it's between 30 and 40% on any particular site, but you always have to take a viability and deliverability into account. So it's frequently a negotiation, but it's through that process that we can secure the affordable housing from the private housing market developers. So we do have quite an intervention in that, and so through most of the developments that come forward, we do achieve some affordable housing. Of course, we'd like more, but that's just the way the market operates, unfortunately, and the way the planning system has operated. And so there are limitations to what we can do, but we try our best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, I can't see anybody else's hand up electronically or physically. As I said, this has been recorded. It will go on the council website. So if you want to go back and listen to this again, or in particular, if you want to go back and have a look at some of the slides on the PowerPoint presentation, which are actually really quite interesting, and you can do that at your leisure, then by all means do. If you've got any other comments or questions, then please contact us. And if we can't answer them, we'll find somebody that can. But Stephen, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your presentation tonight. It's really interesting, and to engage people at an early stage in this is really important, because it's quite a long time frame. Obviously the government have elongated the time frame, but it gives us a chance to go through the consultation that we've already done, and all that original consultation, none of that will be lost. All of that is just feeding into the whole thing. But if everybody's happy, then I'm going to give you 10 minutes of your evening back. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we do hope you enjoyed the presentation. Good night.
Great. Thank you, Dave.